Three, two, one, let's go! It is so great to have you here while we talk about stuff. What stuff? Nondescript stuff. Really, anything is fair game. This video, though, we are talking about the streaming juggernaut that is Netflix, who they are, how we were introduced to them, and how they've influenced the world as a whole. That being said, I would love for this to not just me be talking into the open air. The questions are laid out in the comments so they can be easily copied and replied to in the comments, in shorts or your own videos, at home privately, in a journal, or among friends, if that is where you feel most comfortable. This is about learning what Netflix means to everyone! How would you describe Netflix to someone who has never heard of the concept? Okay, Netflix started in the late 90s as a service that exclusively sold and rented DVDs through the mail. From what I understand, the founders saw what Amazon was doing with books and wanted to kind of find their own niche, settling on DVDs because they were easy to store and ship, as well as being relatively new and exciting technology at the time. One of the founders of Netflix loved to tell a story about how they saw what physical media rental locations like Blockbuster were doing, gouging customers with late fees, and started Netflix as this kind of protest against rental fees, but that is absurd since for the first few years Netflix had their own late fee policy, which they would only drop around when they switched to a subscription-based pricing platform. It wasn't until 2007 that Netflix really found their niche when they started streaming movies directly to the audience at home. Now, what is streaming? If you're watching this over YouTube, that is streaming, watching videos over the internet. It is the easiest way I can describe what streaming is in and of itself without doing a whole video on that instead. And that is not what we are here for. Netflix was just the first to make streaming movies and TV viable to the public at home. Since then, streaming has caused the cable network television industry to virtually die, has put the physical media industry, the DVD industry Netflix was founded on, to go into life support, and is working on putting the theater industry down as well. And it's not Netflix alone, it's just Netflix that led the charge that nearly every studio and distributor followed. Now we have a proverbial streaming war of attrition between 24 companies to see who will be the last to have their coffers run empty. But yeah, Netflix as we know them today is still one of the major players in streaming. Statistica.com reports that the streaming platform has 269 million subscribers in the first quarter of 2024. They have a huge ever-changing library of both movies and television that spans every genre imaginable, both original titles that Netflix either produced or purchased, as well as popular and less popular titles that Netflix licensed the right to air for a period of time. What are your earliest memories of Netflix? My first memories with Netflix have to be some sort of exposure via their advertising. Netflix was pretty relentless when it came to making sure everyone everywhere knew they got DVDs in the mail. Again, when they moved to streaming, I remember this specific ad being everywhere.
Buy some peanut brittle and I'll raise money.
Peanut brittle. Want to watch a movie?
Netflix now delivers unlimited movies 2 ways, instantly to your TV, plus DVDs by mail.
Now, I can't say the date for sure, but it had to have been late 2011 or early 2012 when I finally had a device that I could easily stream Netflix on, since at the time we were a little behind as far as the game consoles were concerned. The first thing I got to watch Netflix on was the Nintendo 3DS, and I'm sure this is exactly how the creators of the 2004 animated classic Samurai 7 intended their series to be viewed. I'm not gonna lie, it was a pretty miserable experience. Probably because I was on the top floor of my house and the internet router was in the basement. But between the buffering and, having a screen size the size of a 3DS, none of this was Netflix's fault, besides maybe putting the app on the 3DS in the first place, but it definitely wasn't the best first impression for Netflix. My first good experiences with Netflix would come, a few months later when I finally got it figured out on my Nintendo Wii, and it worked great. The first thing I ultimately ended up binging was Breaking Bad because that was both hitting its stride as the final season was coming up, but Netflix also pushed the hell out of it. I did eventually even get to use their DVD by mail service before it ended. My experience was good. The discs were not in perfect condition, but everything worked, and the process of mailing things back was pretty easy. Do you have any experience working with Netflix? No, I do not. I would love to pitch them a series or a movie, but I have no idea how I would even go about that. Besides, that's a later question for, later on. I think I've looked through their job postings to see if there's anything remote that would be worthwhile, but no real such luck yet. Do you share your Netflix account? If you are a person who has friends or family and did not share your Netflix account, you are one of the few. Of course, I shared the wealth, unabashedly, and I still would be if the company did not get stingy. Their efforts to eliminate password sharing was part of the decision to ultimately cancel Netflix for me last year. It's not that I couldn't even pay for Netflix. I paid for the premium service so I could share with my parents in as many screens as I could, because not everyone can figure out the service on their own. But they live 3 states away, and Netflix made that impossible after changes that forced all devices to be connected to the same internet. Or, whatever they did. I don't entirely understand. So I would rather hop on the service maybe a month at a time now, watch everything I need to, and cancel it again. I'm not so anxious or insecure about missing something as it comes out that I can't swing back to Avatar: The Last Airbender or One Piece or Stranger Things after the hype has died down a bit. What are your favorite Netflix memories? Okay, so my first date with my spouse was a really simple Netflix date that I won't forget. We had been watching 2002's Equilibrium with their roommate before they went to bed. Then we just cuddled and watched Danger 5, a very low-budget series built around camp that Netflix had purchased the rights to pretty early on. It made for a very weird, very us date that ended well enough that we're married now, so
All right, let's get straight to the biscuits.
But would my relationship be different without Netflix being that first adventure? I mean, fuck, I hope not. That would be weird if that was the big influence on us, that our relationship would not exist without a streaming service. I would very much like to think my relationship is stronger than that, but that's not even the question. Let's move on. What do you think Netflix does better or worse than other streaming services? I have never particularly loved how Netflix categorizes their movies. I understand there are hidden codes you can use to help search for genres, but I shouldn't have to memorize or print out a list to find something worthwhile. I also do like that some streaming services have channels that just run shows and movies and franchises on repeat. It may be conventional, but it's also fun to flip through Pluto TV some nights, and it makes it a really easy communal experience when things are premiering on a service like Shudder. Also, I know it just came out that they never will, but I wish beyond wishes that the former DVD shipping service would release their series on physical media, so people didn't have to order foreign imports or bootlegs to ensure they will always have access to shows and movies that are really important to them. Oh, and again, their no sharing policy can get banned. That being said, I do appreciate that Netflix is constantly pushing new ideas people bring them for series and movies that would have been rejected otherwise. Not everything Netflix produces is a hit, but when something is a hit, it hits really big. And it sounds like they are relatively easy to work with. They have also brought a huge amount of programming from overseas that otherwise would have been ignored, I think. Who do you think will win the streaming wars? I do have a feeling we will have one more new streaming service come forth that will do something new. I don't know what that is yet, but I feel it in my bones there is one more big shakeup. I have no idea what that's going to be. I think in the long run, both Pluto TV and Tubi will survive. They both have a huge amount of nostalgia programming in them that are going to feed people over the age of 40 until the end of time. Not only are they free, but with rotating classic cartoons and sitcoms and game shows and movies, they are pretty well set. So will more niche services like Shudder and Dropout. They operate on a budget that can survive off of small install bases if times get tough for them. and they, by all accounts, are doing great right now anyway. But of the bigger paid services, I think 3 will survive this ultimate showdown of ultimate streaming destiny. I think Disney Plus, because as long as children exist in America, there's going to be an audience for Disney Plus. I think Marvel might slow down, but it's going to continue to make enough money to drive interest, along with Star Wars, despite what smaller, louder quarters of the internet are crying. There are also rumors that they could license out most of HBO or Discovery Plus's programming as well, which would be pretty huge. I mean, HBO, man, if you had come into the scene like 2 years earlier, or maybe even just a year earlier, I think you would have been in such a better place to be dominating streaming today, but you did in HBO. I think that new big streaming service that is going to shake things up somehow is going to be one of those survivors. And yeah, I think Netflix will stand tall, maybe not the tallest, but because this is what Netflix does, unless they make a series of historic blunders like Warner Brothers Discovery is currently doing. I think Netflix is going to be a big sector in the streaming market for a long period of time. I do think some things could cause Disney Plus to fold in the long run, and my second guess is a bit of a shot in the dark, but Netflix only does streaming, and they got in on the market early enough to have a lot of the market trust and to be seen as the standard bearer for the foreseeable future. How do you feel Netflix has influenced the motion picture industry? To say Netflix was a disruptor...
Disruptors. All of us.
...is an understatement. Netflix and streaming as a whole is practically one of the horsemen of the apocalypse for both movie theaters and the home media industry. Streaming has single-handedly made the cable industry obsolete. It is infinitely more convenient for people to stream movies than any of the other 3 options I mentioned before, all of which are part of the motion picture industry. Because of streaming, you can watch almost anything at your convenience. There was a time where you just had to miss a show. If you had to work or had a vacation or a sporting event, TV at the time compensated by making shows more episodic and then serialized. But the era I grew up in, I saw that transition to serialization happen in media, and I cannot express how much it sucked to miss every 3rd episode of Dragon Ball Z because I had sports practice after school. You don't have to leave home or pay individual fees for movies like you do going to theaters or purchasing physical media like DVDs and Blu-rays. Paying as a subscription gives you more for your buck in a time when saving money has become increasingly more vital for people to just exist in general. All of these conveniences are arguable improvement that come with their own downsides, especially the loss of the individual ownership of the media like you get with, DVDs, as well as the experience of seeing a movie in a crowded theater with an enthusiastic crowd. Top 5 Netflix original series or movies. Really quickly, because I don't think any of my picks are really crazy or out there. Okay, you all know Stranger Things. It's hyper 80s nostalgia in full neon. Is it accurate to the time? Not really, but neither is a giant psychic, meat monster. Wednesday, because I am a big fan of the Addams Family franchise in all of its aspects, and Wednesday is a fun way to get all of the humor of the Addams Family wrapped around a little murder mystery. One Piece.
I'll do you the kindness of killing you all together.
I love this adaptation. I love adaptation in general, and this truncates a lot of Oda's original franchise as well. Netflix's One Piece is not a replacement for the anime or the manga, but it's an alternative for a story that runs 1,000+ manga chapters or episodes depending on your poison. Gamera Rebirth. I love my big turtle defender of the earth and children. Gamera Rebirth is a short anime series that is a fun throwback to the Kaiju's original lighthearted Showa era that I think you will enjoy if you can get over the animation techniques, because I think that's what most people have issues with. Castlevania. Conversely, this is not lighthearted. Castlevania is just edge sharpened to a razor's point. A little melodramatic, but that is also part of the fun of it. Pitch. A Netflix series or movie. Okay. I know I could bring this up many places doing a pitch, but Netflix, I think this has a place on your service. I think it has a relatively low overhead cost and is a new spin on something that is currently trending, and I hope it remains trending and popular as I have been a fan of it for a while. I want to pitch you a tabletop role-playing game show. cast several strangers and have them build some backstory around a selection of character types, have them do their stuff throughout the series. Every bit of gold they make throughout translates to dollars in the real world, though, and every hero that survives the season takes home the equivalent of gold they have acquired in their adventures in dollars. Netflix, depending on how hard you want to go, we can have every one of the contestants isolated from one another except during gameplay, give them tablets that they can use to communicate with privately so they can scheme about stealing from one another, while we, the game masters, and the audience will all have privy to all of that conversation. I think there's a lot of potential there in Netflix. If we are generating story here that we can repackage and resell, if we do it ethically, rewrite the adventure like the Legends of Vox Machina on Amazon Prime. I mean, if we make our own tabletop role-playing system for the show, we can sell that to the home market if the series becomes a hit. Surviving cast members can come back in new seasons, either returning for sequel campaigns or brand new adventures. I mean, call me Netflix, I can get way more into depth here. What does Netflix mean to you? To me, I don't think Netflix isn't ever going to be more than a channel to me. I see Netflix the way I saw Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or TNT growing up. A place where I consume some of my favorite movies and series, a place where I found a lot of the things that I would identify with and that would influence what I enjoyed, but not a brand I particularly latch onto like a Disney or Nintendo. Part of that is because I have complicated feelings about how Netflix has damaged the physical media and theatrical markets. Those are really important to me. Not all the change Netflix has brought has been for the better. We have traded plastic and cardboard waste of DVDs and VHS tapes for an incalculable consumption of energy with streaming services. Something that also has a huge ecological effect that I don't think the average consumer necessarily thinks about. But I did have my first date with my spouse over a series that Netflix revived. They are who introduced us to series that resonated with untold viewers, not only their more original productions, but the series they co-opted and licensed from other countries like the Great British Baking Show. It's where I first watched Doctor Who. Netflix has a huge amount of South Korean media. There has to be a middle ground where Netflix can help the theatrical market by releasing things in theaters as well as the home market, but keep some of your big shows exclusively to streaming for 5 years. I don't care, but give me some hope that we can own these shows. The world is becoming increasingly more unreliable. It would go a long way if Netflix trusted us to keep them around. They've made a lot of good change, just with disregard for a lot of the bad stuff that's come along with the good change since then. Okay, thank you so much for this little adventure through Netflix with us here. I am genuinely interested in what Netflix means to you. Do you have any specific memories with the company, or do you have attachment to the company and are a Netflix fan as opposed to me who is just a fan of some of the stuff Netflix puts out? I am going to rattle off some topics that we are doing videos like this on in the future, so if you have any questions to be part of these questionnaires, please throw that in the comments as well. DC properties. Dragon Ball. Friday the 13th. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's about all I got right now. I have been putting more stuff out on the channel that I hope is of interest, but regardless, thank you for being amazing. Go give someone you like a compliment today, unprompted. Just spread some love out there, please. Thank you.